Good morning, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining us. My name is Tuesday LaRue. I'm going to be the host and mediator for today's really interesting conversation. And I think this is a really big conversation that is just going to be so good to have. We're talking about the reduction of food waste, and we've got a diverse panel of experts joining us today. The topics we're going to be covering today is, of course, food wastage and the reduction of it in restaurants, and how the farm industry can help with all of these strategies. Our panelists are going to be sharing their opinions about the inventory management, culinary practices, sustainable resourcing, and data-driven decision making. Oh, that's a lot of D's. Now, I'd love to introduce our panelists before we get started. We've got Bronte Vea. I hope I'm saying that correct. Yes, she is the co-founder and managing director of Below Farm. Thank you so much for joining us. We've got Chef John Rogers, our hospitality expert. Thank you so much. We've got Chef Rita, the head of Mason 15. Thank you for joining us. And Gary Turnbull. Bull? Or am I saying Bull? Gary Turnbull, our Chief Operating Officer of York Brands. Thank you so much. And then, of course, Omar Al-Shami, our founder and CEO of Watermelon. Thank you so much. So we're just going to be having a really good conversation today. I'll be directing questions to everybody individually, but if at any point you feel like you want to jump into the conversation, you've got something to add, please feel free to do so. And then to the audience, we're going to have a question and answer afterwards. So any of your burning questions you have for our lovely experts here, please save them and we'll answer all of them. So let's dive in. The main reason we're here is what I said was food wastage and the reduction of it. It has now become a global issue, and they estimated that 1/3 of all food produced actually goes uneaten. This represents a really tremendous loss of resources and, of course, can contribute to environmental damage. Now, Mr. Gary Turnbull, you are, of course, in the restaurant industry with restaurant operations. Now, we know that the effects can range from, purchasing food, inventory management, storage, preparation, and portion sizes. The question I want to ask you is, what are the strategies that you are adopting in your restaurant? Because we know that restaurants can be an environment, and each restaurant has their own culture, not necessarily just with the staff, but in terms of helping educate the customer as well. So I'll give you the floor.
Thank you very much. I work for York Brands, which was our new name that we coined ourselves with this year. Previously it was just Pickle, and York Brands is now developed into 4 homegrown local brands, with Pickle being the biggest one that we have, a new concept called Bombard that we launched this year. And then we acquired a very nostalgic, shall I say, Cafe Deli 1762 this year as well. It's been in the market since 2010. And we're just starting a new coffee business with our own roastery called Southport. So we have a very diverse portfolio of brands, and waste is obviously paramount across that for all the reasons that you said, as well as on profitability. I think the biggest thing for me is our people and how we train them within waste. This starts from day one when somebody joins our business, be it in their orientation. Our teams across all the different brands, which all have very different menus, again, review this in their daily briefings. Our senior ops guys then meet on a weekly basis and again review, obviously, the data that we then get from our systems. And then our shift management graduation program is also extremely important, because our shift managers lead our venues every single day, every single week. And they then can dictate or not dictate what a good waste target is, or making sure that our team are trained. So I think the people aspect of our business is super critical before we even look at our technology or our supply chain part of the business, because if these guys are not doing it day in, day out in our venue, we're going to end up with obviously very high waste, which is not good for the environment, not good for profitability. So our people is first and foremost our biggest strategy, and we do what I've just covered there. I think the tech that we use would probably be our next area that we'd really focus on. Our POS system is extremely detailed, super easy to use, and gives us phenomenal data. And that's then connected with our back of house inventory system. With both of those working together, with hopefully the correct input from our team members, as we were discussing earlier, Omar, that gives us an amazing data. And when we couple that with our sales projections, which I said all of our venue teams look at in detail every single day, as well as our senior operations leadership, all of that pulled together then leads us to have limited waste within our business. Since I've joined the business, we've went from around 1.5% waste, and we now sit around about 0.4 across the 4 brands, which is pretty good. We want to be better, but again, obviously, we're now looking at the cafe deli concept that we have in 1762. Everything is made fresh to or daily every day, such as salad. So we do have that wastage at the end of the night, but we're continually looking to strive for ways that we can improve that and make it better for us as a business and for the communities that we operate in.
I love that. It's like starts with the people and their mindsets and then trickles down into technology and how it can assist in moving that forward. And yeah, keeping things fresh, it's always that tricky balance. But as you kind of know the way your system operates and what your customers really lean more towards, you guys can really look at doing that. And well done. I think that deserves a round of applause. I mean, going down to zero point 0.4, that's really impressive. Congrats. So now we're talking about the kitchen, about food. The main person in the kitchen is, of course, the chef. So, Chef Rita, we know that the restaurants, of course, face lots of challenges in terms of profit margins, keeping the quality and the freshness of the food, but also minimalizing scrap foods when in preparation. I'd love to get your opinion in terms of elaborating in the solutions that you use in
Sure,
your.
sure. Good morning. So yes, the world is facing challenges when it comes to sustainability and food wastage. And as a chef, I have a responsibility to educate and to train my team to find the best ways to support sustainability and to reduce food wastage. So in our kitchen, the ways that we do that is many ways, but one of the ways would be assessing the portion sizes, and we gauge that by checking the amount of food that's left on the plates. And obviously, some dishes are more filling, and so we keep that in mind when we are deciding on portion sizes. So we're flexible with reducing and increasing portions. Another thing is we use freshness as our standard, and we don't, so not the beauty of the produce, which is known to be a global problem by, when it comes to supermarkets. The way they choose their produce depends on how pretty, how beautiful it looks, and not always on the taste. So chefs can be creative and find ways to incorporate the imperfect fruit or vegetable in their dishes, because they're still delicious and they're still nutritious. They just, they don't look perfect. We also try to use the whole fruit and vegetable. So we don't throw away our vegetable offcuts. We like to blend them, and then we sieve them, and then we freeze them. They're full of flavor, and we add them to our stocks and our soups. We don't throw away our herb stems. We use those to infuse our oils and our vinegars. We add them to our sauces. Or to our soups for added flavor. The fruit peel, we add it to our jams. The zest, we add it to our garnish. These are, some ways that, we use. We are strict when it comes to purchasing quantity, and this comes with experience and with being true to yourself as a team, to be able to regularly change and adjust based on your needs and the customer's needs. And proper planning will eliminate the worry of not ordering enough ingredients, and also just help better prepare the chef to know how much they need to order. Of course, we try to support local and seasonal as much as we can to support local farmers and to reduce carbon footprint. Adding specials on the menu helps to reduce food wastage. If we have more of an ingredient, we get creative. we make a new dish, we add it as a special, and that also keeps it interesting for the guests. I find that using some ingredients in multiple dishes will help to control food waste. So yeah, I mean, chefs are where it starts and ends in a kitchen when it comes to making the choices with purchasing and creating the dish and plating that dish for the customer. Yeah.
Wow, let's give her a round of applause. That's amazing. Yeah, I
Thank you.
think a part of me didn't realize how much input chefs have,
Yeah.
from the beginning right till the
Absolutely.
end. And really the small things, like you said, like using the whole fruit or vegetable
Right.
in other things, it's a small thing, but done consistently,
Yes.
it can make a big impact, especially
Absolutely.
when that mindset is shared.
Right.
And I know you mentioned about the food, in terms of like the best or most organic fruits or vegetables aren't necessarily the sexiest ones.
Right.
And I guess that could be a challenge living in an age of Instagram and everybody wanting everything to be so perfect. And almost like you mentioned, getting into the mindset of people and educating the customers that healthy is sexy. Let's promote more of that. Now, talking about the food and everything coming in, where it actually comes from. And we're going to be talking about local farming and the significant role it plays in food wastage. Now, when we talk about local farming and the impact that it has, we're talking about minimalizing the distance that the food has to travel, because there's a lot that goes into that. There's the storage, making sure the food stays fresh, making sure that everything is preserved, and the longer it has to travel, the more that goes into actually getting it there. And this question is for Ms. Bronte. So you are the owner of the local mushroom farming company. I'd love to get your opinions on the way that local farming kind of fits into the whole reduction of food waste.
Yeah, thank you, Tuesday. My name is Bronte Ware. I'm the co-founder of Below Farm. We're a UAE-based mushroom farm. We grow specialty mushrooms like oyster, king oyster, shiitake, lion's mane, chestnut, maitake, all here locally in between Dubai and Abu Dhabi. And when I think about local food production, one of the things I think you touch upon there is that not only is it close to the market and therefore reducing food miles, it's actually reducing the amount of time that it's traveling. Therefore, it's got longer to sit in your fridge and you have more time to use it before it needs to be thrown away and turn out as waste. But when you're talking about food waste, the number that's thrown around is that 30% of food is either lost or wasted. And that's actually divided up into food loss and food waste. So food waste is what happens like at the sort of retail consumer stage. That's about 17%. And the other 13% is actually food loss. And food loss is before it even reaches the plate or the kitchen or the way that it's processed. And a lot of that actually comes from farms. And the way that I think about it is I have three ways that I can work with restaurants to reduce that piece about touching on both food loss and waste. So firstly, it's what we grow. Secondly, it's what we sell, because those are not always the same. And thirdly, it's what we can take back from you. So to begin with, what we grow. What we grow is really based on our volume predictions, right? Because we grow locally, my customers can order from me the day before, I'll deliver it to them the next day. They love that, it's great, but it doesn't take me a day to grow mushrooms. It takes weeks, and mushrooms are actually one of the sort of shorter produce that in terms of growth cycles. So, we talk a lot about predictions in terms of what you're using. Having that sort of foresight to be able to say to your suppliers what you're going to need helps them to grow the right amount of food so that they are not wasting food at their stage of the process. Then when it comes to what I sell, the term farm to table is thrown around a lot. It's a sexy term that seems to get a lot of buzz time, but in the truest sense of the word and the meaning, is actually when you think about originally farmers would, what's on your plate would be determined by what is farmed, what is harvested that day. And that's what it means by farm to table. You're actually taking what the farmer has available and putting it on the menu rather than dictating the menu based on what you want to then make the farm give you that. So that farms, for us, we do a farm to table box. I have however many varieties of mushrooms I listed off, I always have one naughty teenager that's not doing the yield that I need it to, so I have to grow extra. And sometimes one of them does great. And so I need to make sure that when I have those fluctuations, I have somewhere to go. So we do a nice farm to table box, which sends out the mushrooms that in a bit of a mixed mushroom every day is something different. Finally, it's what I can take back. Mushrooms are nature's decomposers. They are nature's tool in the circular economy. They break down organic matter that otherwise won't be recycled and bring it back into the circle of life. And we are working with what materials are available here locally to grow mushrooms on. We started off with date palm. We use the palm leaves from the date trees. We mill those down as a substrate for the mushrooms. We're now working with the expo site to take all of the used coffee grounds and mix that into our substrate. So coffee grounds is another thing that if you have lots of excess, come talk to me. Maybe we can figure out how I can get them into my substrate. And there's a couple of other things in terms of waste materials that are available that can be put back in. So it's also thinking about what are you doing with your compost? What are you doing with your waste? And there are lots of really cool and interesting companies growing up in this space doing some really interesting things with the actual waste that is generated at the end of the day.
I love that. Let's give her a round of applause. I feel like, there are sexy terms that are thrown around, and that's because, sometimes people don't know better. But being educated and kind of knowing that the 30% of the food that isn't being eaten isn't just because it's being discarded. There's a percentage of it that gets lost while traveling, which makes you want to eat local and eat fresher. And talking about that, I want to talk about bringing local farming, chefs, and restaurants together. And who better to speak about it than Omar? You're a founder of Watermelon. And I just want to know how your platform is kind of contributing to the reduction of food waste, especially when it comes to chefs, restaurants, and local farmers.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tuesday, and thank you everyone for me being here. Essentially, Watermelon started out as an ecosystem, a network for everyone to work together in the food and beverage industry. When we started out, we did not concentrate on a specific kind of produce. What we thought of was how can we get everyone to talk to each other and work with each other efficiently and transparently. The market is very fragmented. It's very difficult for people to communicate, as well as trust in the market was an issue. So we went. Our target in the beginning was to solve that, but then we realized that there's a bigger issue at hand, which is the local produce and local manufacturing. And since we built this network effect and this ecosystem, we decided that we need to have a concentration on the local aspect of it. So today, for example, let's say Below Farms has just said, I want coffee grounds. Now, if Chef from Maysan 15 says, I would love to give Below Farms my coffee grounds, it may not be feasible for Below Farm to just pick it up from her. However, what we can do is we can have Maysan 15, as well as Chef John, as well as the York group, all group together and say, we will hand over our coffee grounds on a specific day. And then by doing that, we're able to reduce the cost of getting those coffee grounds as well as the economic impact of it to Below Farms. And Below Farms, of course, can have access to all of them, and they can communicate with each other and work with each other efficiently and transparently. And that's essentially what we started to do. And when we say farm to table, I mean, it's very true. Bronte is saying that there are a lot of different steps for a certain fruit and vegetable to reach the table. And it's very difficult for even a chef to deal with multiple farmers. But by having Watermelon in between, today a chef can come in and say, I want, let's say, lettuce. Or let's say mushrooms, stay with the same. And let's say for whatever reason, Bronte did not have that specific mushroom in place, we can find others. More importantly, once we have restaurants, and Horeca especially, I think Chef will be talking about that soon, once we have those orders coming through, we will be able to create a specific demand cycle, which the farmers can work off, and therefore be able to farm the correct amounts and sell their whole produce, and therefore reduce wastage. What we are targeting is to build the demand base for our local farmers, because we have a solemn belief, and I believe this is the same worldwide, that the farmers, at least in the Middle East, the farmers in the Middle East will never be able to farm enough to cover the market requirements. This is a fact. And the problem is that the farmers can't get to that demand. And we're bridging that gap. And that's how we can reduce wastage, because I know, for example, that I have farmers that during the season will throw away between 200 to 300 kilos of fruits and vegetables daily because they don't look good, literally because of the way they look. And through watermelon, they can now reach chefs that would very much want to take on these products. So, for example, 1756, right? Is that right? 1762. 1762 has daily salads. So 1762 will very easily be able to buy those 200 to 250 kilograms of, well, maybe not the whole amount, I hope the whole amount, of fruits and vegetables, because it's all going into a salad. And I'm talking about a bio-organic farm. So they can get bio-organic produce at minimal prices because it was going to be thrown away. Absolutely. So this is what we're doing. We're solving that issue. We're filling that gap, and we're doing that by creating an ecosystem where you can not just only buy local, you can buy local and non-local. So by having a place where you, let's say going into a Carrefour, let's say, you have everything available as well as local. That one-stop capability allows us to promote the local. So when you enter the store, the first thing you see is local, and you're enticed to buy local, and therefore helping the community as a whole.
I love that. I love the fact, yeah, please, round of applause. I love the fact that you're almost just opening the communication chain so that everybody knows, so that if chef knows that, you know, these mushrooms, the oyster mushrooms are growing great this season, maybe that can be one of her specials and that she can push that. The whole coffee bean situation, you know, being able to communicate. So instead of everybody being an island, everybody is now working together and seeing the best way. So I think that's actually absolutely great. Sorry, speechless. So now we're going to be moving on to online technology and how that affects food wastage. So food wastage, obviously, when it gets reduced, the economy, it affects the economy. And this is where I'm going to be asking oh, just give me 2 seconds. I want to be introducing, yes, John Rogers, our hospitality expert in terms of food wastage and how it affects the economy, both good and bad.
Yeah, so I think Omar made loads of good points there. You've stolen lots of my points, actually. So I think moving back into the UK, when I moved over, getting used to the whole system over here, having purchasing managers who deal with the suppliers was very tricky. Whereas now with watermelon coming into the market, giving the chefs and the teams the ability to communicate to the suppliers, okay, you've got 100 kilos of whatever going off, bringing that into the teams, doing specials and all this sort of stuff. It's really a key component of missing over here for me. The ability of the chefs to then create that in the kitchen. But it's not just how you then take that product into the kitchen, it's how do you store it. You know, it's a lot of people store food incorrectly at home in the kitchen. You know, you see meat coming in vacuum bags and then the chefs will take it out of it and it then goes off very quickly, and then the surprise when it goes off very quickly. So, you know, the vacuum bags are there for a reason. There's dry aging now that's very popular in the region. There's also the fermentation that you see Chef Carlos up at table does amazing stuff. There's Maher at Tab Chili in Al Wasl. He's got a great shop there teaching fermentation. So these guys are also doing classes where you can go and learn how to do fermentation, do kimchi, do all these kinds of things. So for me, it's a real, like you say, it's a real symbiosis as an organism where Dubai is now catching up to UK in a lot of elements. For me, Dubai is the capital of the world at the moment for food. To have all these technologies catching up to the rest of the world really will allow the economy to sort of grow and grow and grow. Independent growers like Below Farm who can bring on mushrooms, and there's so many independent growers now, vertical farms in Al Quoz where you wouldn't. It's a warehouse, and you drive past it, you wouldn't even imagine there's lettuce and tomatoes and watermelons and all sorts inside that 5-6 years ago was nowhere to be seen. You had the chicken farm and that was it really, maybe some milks and that was it. So to see that side of the industry boom, it should really be a positive sign for business moving forward, that the longevity is here to stay. It's not just a flash in the pan. it will really sort of catch up with the rest of the world, I think.
I think that's amazing, and I think, like you said, iterating the environment and people communicating and learning how to store food properly, as something as simple as that, it can play a really big role in the food reduction and food wastage. Now, let's please give Mr. John a round of applause. Thank you so much. I feel like I have learned so much. I'm sure everybody else has. I just want to thank our panelists so much for taking your time out to come and educate and share your wisdom and share your knowledge with us. If anybody in the audience has any questions, please feel free to ask now. Oh, we've got one. Would you?
Sorry, that's of our overall sales. So that's how obviously we measure our waste percentage. So obviously I can't give you that. Yeah, I can't, as a waste percentage, your COGS might be 30%. Of that, 0.4% is our waste. Obviously, I can't give you the top line dirham number, or I'll get shot, and I'll never be invited back on a panel ever again. But yeah, so we've reduced it overall from that to 0.4. Look, our pickles now pretty much cookie cutter approach all across the business. There's not any real short shelf life products that we have there. 1762's obviously given us some challenges. We're making some menu engineering with that just now. But again, it's always trying to source locally for there and ensure that it's made fresh every single day. So that's a little bit higher than that. But overall for yolk right now, then we're at 0.4, which we're pretty happy with.
Awesome. Happy with the answer?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's
He's going to find you later in the corridor somewhere. Do we have any other questions? Yes, at the back. Should we? Yeah, there we go. We've got a mic.
Great. All right. Hi. So a quick question going back to the topic that you have mentioned with the local produce versus the non-local produce. So as we can tell, recent years, specifically lately, with the increase in the vertical farming and the greenhouses and whatnot, of course, when it comes to vertical farming, there is that sort of limitation into what you can produce. Currently, the most famous one is basically the greens. So with that being said, and with that trend is increasing and it's having a larger impact in the market to support the local production, what are your insights? That's a general question. What are your insights on the increase in the greenhouses in the market and the vertical farming to supply as much demand in the market as possible? It's in general, doesn't matter. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess below. Okay, so let me. In my case, the more the greenhouses, the better. The only thing is that as a person builds a greenhouse, they start out as a small farm, and for them to have access to hotels as well as restaurants, etc., is very difficult because they need to have a bigger sales team. And I reduce the cost and the requirements to have that, and therefore give them the ability to sell their produce better. That's my take on it.
Yeah, I think it's not just about vertical farming. Like vertical farming is one part of it, but only certain things can be grown vertically. Actually, in very basic, vertical farming means shelves. Farming on shelves. That's it. It's really nothing more than that. But you know, when you're talking about controlled environment agriculture, that's much broader. You can have more traditional sort of farming in soil. It can be aquaponic, it can be hydroponic, you can be using fish in there in the aquaculture. There's so much incredible stuff that's being grown here, produced here locally. Oysters, salmon, mushrooms, leafy greens, tomatoes, figs, watermelons. Like actually the list is never ending. And you know, there's sort of lots in terms of meat as well. Chickens as a starting point. And there's some interesting thing going on in terms of cattle. Sharjah have done a big wheat field, which is pretty nuts. So yeah, ostriches. So yeah, it's
Ostriches and ostrich eggs. UAE actually exports ostrich meat and ostrich eggs.
See, I'm from South Africa. I thought that was a South African thing. Wow, guys. You learned from the best. Okay, cool. I'll take that.
But yeah, so there's incredible things that are happening, and it's just the beginning. So as Omar has alluded to, like getting into Horeca is more of a challenge for a local farm. The easiest starting point for us anyway was going to retail. They take big volumes really reliably, whereas as so supporting those local farms is important to be able to then grow, because you need to have the money funding into the farm to then be able to say, look, this is a successful business model, we can do more, we can compete competitively on price, which a lot of them you kind of have to do. And like, people actually think local, they think cheaper because you're not paying for imports, right? So there's a whole like financial piece that needs to work, and that needs to scale to grow, and it's just at the beginning.
Thumbs up, happy? Awesome. Do we have any other questions? Okay, well, I have oh, just itchy head. Okay, no worries. So I just have a last question, and that is, can you leave us with any piece of advice in terms of, as people who might not be, know the behind the scenes of being a chef or the online or the farming, how can we as just normal people really know what to look for? Maybe when we're in a restaurant, how can we support you guys in terms of reducing food waste on maybe a day-to-day or restaurant basis? And that's an open question.
Finish your food.
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, take the leftovers home, order as much as you feel you're going to eat. I see a lot of this, like a lot of guests come to restaurants and they will order so much, and then so much food is left over, and it's actually sad to see like all of that go to waste. So order, and then if you're still hungry, order again, and anything left over, take it home, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, we said, order what you need. Stay away from brunches. I think brunches are terrible. There's a great initiative a couple of years ago where the dog shelter up in Quaim were collecting food from brunches. Yeah, we used to do it with Ethos, with our central kitchen. We would send them sort of bones and certain things they could eat. So I think supporting, trying to find hotels where they openly talk about that as well, and they have a conscience, because a lot of people will just talk empty words, but some hotels out there, some companies are actually doing it like properly and supporting food waste and things like this.
Well, that's beautiful to know that if we just, kind of keep our eyes open and really put our ears to the ground, we're able to support, because that's what we want to do. We want to support people who are trying to change, to empower you to get more change done. And same question.
Well, in my case, sign up to Watermelon, right? We are an ecosystem. We are a community. We're growing. We are not where we want to be, and I don't think we ever will be, because the larger the community, the better it is. We're working with companies such as Replate, which does what you were talking about. They go and they get food and they send it to people who will eat it, who need it. As well as companies such as Reloop. We're talking to companies that will also help in getting soil, etc., and doing things like getting food and creating compost from it and fertilizer. So these are all initiatives that we have started to work on. And the more the people sign up, the more that we can have people give back the food that was supposed to be going to waste, to be reused and put to better use. Thank you.
So sign up to Watermelon.
So for me, like, we're coming into COP, right? And 30% of greenhouse gases comes from the food production industry. And if you consider that a third of that food is wasted, that's 10% of greenhouse gas emissions globally that are just going down the drain, in the bin, into landfill. It's insane. So I think the thing is that no one's perfect. Clearly, we have a problem. And so just recognizing where you're not good enough, being transparent about where you need help, be transparent about the areas that you need to improve, means that we can all come together as an ecosystem to try to work to improve, because that's what it really needs. No one person's going to solve this challenge of food waste.
Love that.
Thank you. It's probably similar to what Omar said, is if you can all visit Pickle, Bombard, 1762 or Southport, that's going to be a great help in reducing our waste. But I think overall, to summarize, just be conscious whether you're a guest or whether you're a restaurateur. I think being conscious of the impact that you can have as one person will then just magnify and snowball into being greater for the planet that we want to leave for future generations.
On that really beautiful note, I think the takeaway message is it's always better to work with people in an open environment and see exactly what we can do to help each other to keep growing, keep pushing this message, and of course, keep educating. Guys, I'd like to say thank you so much for taking your time to spend time with us. And thank you so much for our expert panelists. You guys have been amazing. Thank you.